This week's presentation, Live Your Dream and Have Fun Doing It, presented by our own dear Roy Nolan. Usually you see him behind the camera, but today it's David. It's not a huge disappointment. Roy is going to tell us how to live our dream, how to find a need and fill it, how to live the dream, and how to have fun at the same time we make this a better world. Roy Nolan is a professional film video producer, currently living his dream and doing his best to help make a better world. He began his filmmaking career over 60 years ago at the National Film Board of Canada in Montreal, where he learned how to make documentary films. In 1963, he migrated to San Francisco and spent most of the next 40 years working on documentaries for education, TV, and the movie industry, as well as his own independent productions. In 2006, he moved to the Lake Chapala area. Since then, Roy has created many videos about this area. They're really amazing, and some can be seen on his website, which is lakechapalavideos.com. That's pretty easy, lakechapalavideos.com. Please welcome Roy Nolan.
Find a need and fill it. Live your dream. Help make this a better world. And have fun while you're doing it. That's what I've been doing all my life. So, let me tell you a little bit about it. Now, as far as I'm suggestion about how you can do it, I would say most of you here have come here to live and are living here on this beautiful lake. And so, I don't think I need to tell you this. I think I'm preaching to the choir. You know, really, you already know about living your dreams because you're here. So, I think what I'm going to do is tell you how I have been living my dream. So here we go. When I was a young boy, I was very, very curious. I had to know about everything. So I was exploring constantly. And then I discovered photography when I was about 14 years old. So I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be out there photographing everything, especially beautiful women, models, up runways, and everything else. Okay. Well, it didn't work out that way. I became a documentary photographer, cameraman instead. Much, much better. Hallelujah. Okay. That was a documentary filmmaker, unlike a filmmaker that you mostly are familiar with in Hollywood, the narrative types, is a person that goes out and documents life as it really exists. You never know what you're going to run into. You never know. You go into a situation, you got it all planned out, forget it. You do something else. You go with the flow. That's the way it works. So that was just perfect for me. So when I was 20 years old, I got a job at the National Film Board of Canada in Montreal. Fantastic. It was the best place I could have ever been because here are all these great filmmakers that I was with. I mean, they're great in those days. Like, one of the top-notch animators of all times, Norman McLaren. He was one of my best friends. Colin Lowe. He became my mentor. He made all these award-winning and Grammys and everything else awards. So I was being taught by these people. I started as an animation cameraman. I worked my way through that, and then eventually graduated to doing live action camera work, which I ended up doing. I came out one day, and it was very, very cold, and you can all relate to this if you're from Canada. The snow was everywhere. 2 feet of snow in Montreal was nothing. I couldn't find my car, and nobody could find their car. So we're digging and digging and digging. Finally, I got my car. And I got up on the top of the damn thing with my shovel, and I said, this is the last winter I'll spend in this godforsaken place. I'm out of here. The next day, I handed in my resignation. Okay. Well, Colin says, Roy, why don't you get a 6-month contract to finish this off? I did. And he said, make a film you've never actually produced, directed, filmed, and edited a film of your own. Make one. I did. They convinced the executive producer to go ahead and get me to do it. I did. I made this little film, a 10-minute film called Country Auction. Well, it was just a nice little film. But many years later, at the 50th anniversary of the National Film Board of Canada, I got the notice. Your film has been selected to be shown on television today. Out of the thousands of films that the National Film Board had produced, mine was one of them that was shown. I decided then to move, to get out of the cold, to move to California. I'm going to Hollywood, folks. So I wrote letters and sent my resumes to many, many producers, documentary film producers in Hollywood. I got many responses. When you get here, give us a call, set up an appointment. Okay, I did. I was parking my car for my first appointment, and I felt a tap on my shoulder as I was putting the coin in the meter. I didn't know anybody in LA. And I said, who the hell could that be? So I turned around, and there's this guy weaving back and forth, and he's almost falling over me, and his breath could have knocked me right over. He was so drunk, you couldn't believe it. And I looked at him, and I said, man, he says, oh, I really need a cup of coffee. Brother, can you spare that dime? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Where are you from? He says, oh, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Oh, God. And I've been here 13 years, and I wish the hell I'd never come. And I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm an actor. I said, really? He says, yeah, it didn't work out. He says, I wish the hell I could go home. He said, if I were you, young man, I said, I'd get the hell out of here right now. So I said, okay, tell you what, I'm very, very late. I got to go to this appointment. So when I get back, I'll treat you to lunch. Okay. I went to put the coin in the meter, and I thought about it for a few seconds. And I said, oh no. Turned around to him and I said, man, here's the coin. Go get yourself a cup of coffee. I don't have much money. Thanks for your advice. Here's a couple bucks to pay you for your advice. Now, how in the hell do I get on the freeway to get to San Francisco? So he said, you go down there, down there. Anyway, I drove 500 miles that night, 2-lane highways in those days, 1963, all night long to San Francisco. I had crossed through San Francisco on the way, and I'd seen it. It was absolutely beautiful. Anyway, nothing like LA. Every time I did something there, I had to wipe the smog off my face and the tears out of my eyes. Okay, so I got to San Francisco at 8 o'clock in the morning. The sun was rising over the Bay Bridge, the most beautiful sight you would ever want to see. The highest building in San Francisco in those days was 14 stories high. It was gorgeous. I parked my car, I sat there and I looked at it, and I said, I'll drive a cab in this town before I make a film in LA. But actually, I made films in LA after that anyway. Okay, that got me to San Francisco. So I decided that I needed some, I'd forgotten to get a bunch of telephone numbers. So I went down to the public library and I said, where's the Montreal telephone directory? He said, oh, that guy's using it over there. So I went over, I said, when you're finished with it, can I have the directory? He said, okay, sure. Okay. He hands me the directory and I said, you must be from Montreal. He says, yeah, I am. I said, well, why don't we go have a cup of coffee after? And we talk about it. So as we're going out, we're walking down the steps, and there's this big black lady coming up, and she's bawling her head off. She says, they killed him, they killed him, they shot him. And I said, who in the hell are you talking about? She says, the president. And I looked over at Brian, my new buddy, and I said, oh my God, what an entry into San Francisco the day they shot President Kennedy. Okay. Life in San Francisco, I'd been in the film board for 8 years, and then I was going to spend a life of 40 years in San Francisco. I didn't know that, but I did. It was a very interesting time. A few weeks after I got there, I got an invitation to go to lunch at the Canadian consulate, and so they seated me next to this very distinguished business-like lady, much older than me. She was about 50 or something, and I was about not even 30. And so she says, she turns to me, she says, Mr. Nolan. I'd never been called Mr. Nolan before. And she says, I understand you worked at the National Film Board of Canada. And I said, yes, I did. And she said, what did you do there? I said, oh, I was the director and the cameraman and, editor and so forth. She said, well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm the director of the faculty of the communications department of the University of California in Berkeley. And we're about to begin teaching film courses. This is 1963, first time. So she said, we're looking for people to teach the courses. Would you be interested? I said, I didn't have to think very long because I needed a job. I said, sure, I'd be interested. So she said, when I get back to the office, I'll send you the application form. She did. I started filling out the form immediately to get it back to her quickly. And I stopped after about 2 paragraphs, and it said, list all the institutions that you have attended and where you've gotten your degrees. I stopped immediately because I had never been to university. So I said, oh, and I called her immediately. And she called right back and she said, Mr. Nolan, how long did you work at the National Film Board of Canada? I said, 8 years. She said, send the damn thing back to me and I'll fill out everything you can and I'll fill the rest in and be ready to start work in the next 2 weeks. Well, I ended up working there for 3 years, 3 semesters, and then I ended up working at the San Francisco Film of Art because they wanted me to teach there. Okay, enough of that. I don't have enough time to tell you about all the things that happened, obviously, in my career in San Francisco, but I'm going to do a highlight. Okay, what I did, basically, is when I started, I got into the cameraman's union, so I worked in IAA, which is, Alex Stratton will know what that is, and so I worked as a cameraman, union cameraman, and then I got jobs with television stations and networks all over the place, Canada, United States, Europe, lots in Europe, and as a stringer. Okay, I did a lot of work for German television, lots of work. The holistic health movement American Indian movement, all that stuff. Lots and lots of things. Okay. Well, I decided that I wanted to do things on my own. So I started my own company. And I had my own studio for about 25 years or 30 years, out of the 40 years that I was in San Francisco. And so I had crews, hired people, big contracts, whatever. But I was very careful about the kind of productions that I took on. Usually they were teacher training films and things like that. Or I did a lot of work for PBS, because I like PBS. And so it was that kind of stuff. Interviews with the Black Panthers, Eldridge Cleaver, and people like that. So I filmed all these kinds of things, right? There were some very, very interesting things that happened. You know, at one point I was I was at a party at a laboratory in San Francisco, and I was carrying some drinks back for my friend and myself, and I wasn't watching where I was going, and I bumped into somebody. And he wasn't watching where he was going, he bumped into me. We both ended up on the floor with our drinks all over us. And I looked over at him, I leaned over and said, well, fancy meeting you here. And he says, and what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm looking for a job. He said, really? Come and see me tomorrow morning. I said, what do you do? He says, I work for the Disney Channel. Well, I ended up working for the Disney Channel for about 10 months. And I did everything from Jack O'Neill, the wetsuit guy, to totem poles and everything else. It was fun, 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 fun. Okay. One of my favorite companies to work for was Granada Television in England. Granada Television had hired me as a stringer to do work on a film they were making called Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. At least that's what they called it then. I don't know what it's called now. It was about a film about the Vietnam vets coming home. They were in very bad shape, from Agent Orange to legs missing and arms and everything else. And I was filming them constantly. I was going out to the VA hospital and doing all this stuff. So I sent all this footage back, and I was working with Michael Darrow, a producer, field producer, and he said, Roy, if I ever get a chance, I want to work with you again. We're having so much fun together, and you're so good. I was a handheld camera specialist. That was in those days before handheld cameras were really being used. And I did a lot of rock and roll and other kinds of music, bands and stuff. I was constantly in demand to do concerts and stuff. Okay. About a week or so maybe a couple months after, Michael calls me from England and says, Roy, I got another job for you. I hope you can take it. I want to work with you again. I said, okay, what is it? He says, well, it's not far from your place where you live. You don't have to travel far. I said, well, what am I going to do? He said, well, you're going to do as usual, your cameraman and directing. And I said, fine. What am I going to film? He says, we're doing a film about Johnny Cash at San Quentin. I said, okay, fine. He says, what can I do to help you? Get me some crews. So I got him a whole bunch of crews and stuff, lined up stuff, we did things. We went in, filmed the concert. It was a hit with the inmates in there, and they just went crazy. This was just knocked them over. Okay. Then I said, okay, fine. After the concert, they kept me on to do the B-roll, what's called B-roll, the footage that you shoot to put in the video along with the concert. Well, Johnny had to leave immediately after the concert. He had another gig. So I worked with June for a week. June was his wife. Lovely, lovely lady. I fell in love with her, but she was already married. And so was I. So anyway, but we had a lot of fun together. And we had this really nice guy as a trustee. They had assigned us to look after us for security. His name was Mike. So after a couple of days, I asked Mike, "What the hell are you in here for?" He says, I got busted for a few kilos of marijuana, and I got 5 years for it. I served 3 years now, and they let me off on good behavior in the next 3 months." I said, oh man, because I go home that night, I sit around with my crew, and we all get Domino's pizza and get stoned. And here's this guy paying for it. He's paying the price. So I said, this is not right. So I couldn't sleep that night, so in the middle of the night I called my friend Dr. Dave Smith. He started the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic. Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic, anybody from San Francisco would know, was to treat people on overdoses of drugs in the 60s, which was big time in those days. Hippies, remember the hippies? And I was one of them. And so Dave says, "What the hell are you calling me for at 2 o'clock in the morning?" I said, "I told him." He said, "Oh, Roy, forget about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Not until they legalize marijuana." I said, "Well, shit, we got to legalize marijuana then." So I said, now I had a dream. Now I had a goal. So anyway, about 2 or 3 months later, he calls me up and says, "Roy, here's something for you. The University of California, San Francisco is going to put on a seminar, the first ever seminar on marijuana. It's going to be a 2-weekend seminar. Bring your crews in and stuff." I did. I ended up making a film called "You Can't Grow a Green Plant in a Closet." Why did I call it that? Because one guy comes out struggling with a little potted plant. It's scraggly and everything, and he says, "It's very difficult to grow a green plant in a closet." So, okay, now I had the film, and all of these clinics and hospitals and universities and everything else were ordering copies, and they wanted it. And they said, "When can we have it? When can we have it?" So I immediately went down to my direct distribution people in Los Angeles that I get my films distributed to, and I take it to them. One after another, they said, no, we can't distribute your film. It's too controversial." So I said, oh shit, what am I going to do now? So I went back to San Francisco, and I didn't know what to do, because I got all these orders coming in, and I got to get this film out. So, what do? I had been working on other films, so we'd just come back from a shoot, and we're doing the usual thing, Domino's and getting high. And then, so I had just landed a big contract for 12 films with Macmillan Publishing Company to do a whole series of teacher training films. My attorney said, "Roy, check your old contracts to see if there's any clauses you might want to include in this contract." So I was feeling a little tipsy and a little stoned. So I went into the office because I had to get it done. And I looking over things. The first one I pulled out is my old National Film Board of Canada contract. Now, if you can believe this, at the end, I've never heard this before, you sign off, it says, "Signed with zeal and in perpetuity." I said, oh shit. And, under my circumstances, I said, wow, this is really something. So I then immediately walked back to my studio opening, my theater room, and all my crew's all spread out carpets and stuff, and nobody's paying attention. And I said, I would like to have your attention, please. I said, okay. A few of them responded. I said, I have decided to form my own distribution company, and I'm going to call it Zeal and Perpetuity Film Distributing Company. ZIPCO for short. So we did. And the films went out and out and out, and they got sold, and they got sold, and they got sold. A few months later, I got a call from Ottawa, Canada. Remember, I'm from Ottawa, Canada. My secretary says, Roy, I think it's one of your brothers. You better talk to him. I said, okay. I thought something might be wrong with my family. So I answered. The guy said, my boss asked me to call you. I said, really? What did he ask you to call me about? He said, he wants to see your film. You can't grow a green plant in the closet. And I said, who's your boss? He says, Pierre. And I said, you don't mean Pierre Trudeau as the Prime Minister? And he says, yes. And he says, Pierre wants to show it to the cabinet. So I said, this is getting better. Okay, so I put the phone down, and then I said, we got to call the USIA. I told my secretary, call the USIA, have them fax us some forms. We did. We did. And so, USIA, I filled in the forms, we sent them back. The next day I get a call, and the guy on the other, the secretary answered, the guy on the other end of the phone is not very nice, not very pleasant. And he says, we can't give you a permit to export your film. I said, oh really? Why not? He says, I don't have to tell you that. I said, well, thank you very much. Who are you? He says, I'm with the Narcotics Bureau in Dallas, Texas. I said, oh, thank you very much for your advice. Click. Turn around. There's a big crowd behind me by that time in the office. I said, anybody going to Toronto tomorrow or the next day? Yeah, I'm going tomorrow. Okay, take the film with you. The rest is history. Okay, I'm going to switch topics, now, and I'm going to jump in time to 2006. I came here in 2006. I fell in love with this place just like I've heard you people saying now. And I checked out all of Central America, Belize and everything, Panama. RV'd my way down for 10 months, back and forth. Margarita and I went. This, by far, is the best place of all. Forget San Miguel Allende. It's all here. This is it. So I decided this is where I'm going to stay. So we found this old home that was falling apart on the south shore of Lake Chapala and decided to rebuild it. Bought it, rebuilt it. Okay. We'd be working on that for about 2 months. Oh, more than that. Oh, 10 months. 2 years, maybe. 2 years. Yeah, a long time. Anyway. It's quite a long time. And we decided that, it's almost finished. Let's celebrate. So we decided, as usual, we came into Ajijic, which is an hour's drive, and we had dinner at a nice restaurant here. And then after dinner, we'd seen a poster at Super Lake about this concert at the auditorium. So we went to see the Golden Strings at the auditorium. Well, Margarita and I were so impressed with the Golden Strings, with such beautiful music with all of these kids. So there was a man in a wheelchair, and he was passing the baton to his son, I guess it was, and his name was Mendeles. I didn't know he was a famous conductor, but he was passing the baton on to his younger son. It's his son. So they put him over beside me, and I brought my camera to film a few things, just so I always bring my camera. And so he's sitting there beside me, and he looks at me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Mate, I'm just taking some film." He said, "Oh, I'd like to have some of it." I said, "Fine." So we talk a little bit, and then this man comes out from behind, and he comes over, and he's American, and he says, "This is very interesting, you're filming this." He says, I said, "Yeah." And I said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Oh, I taught these kids how to play music." I say, "What's your name?" He says, "Marvin Hearthcock." I said, "Really, Marvin? Could I go visit you? Could Margarita and I come and visit you? And we'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you about teaching these kids and stuff." I said, "Sure." He says, "I'm at Vista del Lago. Come on out." It's on the golf course. So we went out, interviewed Marvin. I was blown away. The guy was an retired aerospace engineer. He was one of the 5 engineers that took the first landing on the moon. So Marvin had come here with his wife, and these kids would all come around, so he would teach them to play music because they all saw instruments that he had. So he invited a friend of his, a famous jazz musician, John Escobar, to come, and they both of them started this group called the Golden Strings. Well, it turned out to be quite a nice orchestra. I was so impressed with all of this that I said, "I want to interview you." We did. Then I said, "I think this is important. We've got to show the world what people are doing here." So I said, "I'm going to make a video about what's happening here, what people are doing in their retirement." Well, we ended up interviewing about 100 people because I went through and did a lot of research. Ended up selecting 36, and I ended up making this film called "Reformatting Retirement at Lake Chapala." It's an eye-opener. You wouldn't believe it. It's just a knockout. It covers everything from people in animal shelters, orphanages, to music people like teaching kids how to play music, to people teaching handicapped kids on horses, everything. It just goes on and on and on. Well, I met some very interesting people in there. I discovered the Lake Chapala Society Children's Art Program, CAP. It was run at that time by Mildred Boyd. Mildred Boyd is no longer with us, but I said, "Mildred, I'd like to interview you." We did. It was an incredibly beautiful interview. She's very, very funny. And then did a lot of filming about the children's art program, and then subsequently did a lot more filming about them, promos and stuff like that. They've become part of my special thing. Okay. So I said, "All right, now we've made that, so now we're going to have to show what's going on the north side and on the south side. That's about what you're doing in your retirement. But let's show what people are doing all over the lakeshore." So subsequently, we ended up making 2 more videos. The first one was called "The Spirit of Lake Chapala." It's all about the North Shore, and it starts at Hoko. At Chapala, ends up at Hoko, and all the things that go on in between. And remember, I'm a documentary filmmaker. This is not a tourist film. This is about what people are doing. So I concentrate on showing what people are doing. Okay. Then we got to Hoko after the first film. I had my good friend Margaret Van Every introduced it. So Margaret, you did it. And it was beautiful, beautiful. This was the story about Roy and myself and Margarita, my partner, searching for our new home. That was the theme of the film. And all the interesting people and situations that we encountered. Okay, we didn't find what we were looking for when we got to Hoko, so I made another film called In the Shadow of Mount Garcia. Now, In the Shadow of Mount Garcia is the South Shore. We ended up finding our home in the shadow of Mount Garcia on the lake shore. So, that was all about the other side. Now, there aren't very many gringos over there. So it was mostly Hispanics and what they're doing and what, and a few people that. So that's what we did. We made those. Now, so I don't get carried away here too much. So where do we go from here? Oh, by the way, while we were doing all this, my partner, Margarita, was incredible. Incredible. She is so talented. She's Mexican. She speaks, of course, fluent English and fluent Spanish, as everybody here knows. And so she was my interviewer. I filmed while she interviewed. And she did the translation if we did Spanish versions. And we did Spanish versions on all of our films that we made here. They're all in Spanish now. And she also was my production coordinator. So she set things up. She was incredible. It would have been very, very difficult to have done it without Margarita. And I love her very, very much. Okay. Where do I go from here? Well, throughout my career, there are four things that I was very, very interested in, political issues that I was interested in working on. Okay. One is, of course, you just heard, legalized marijuana, which, by the way, was just legalized in California. My dream is finally being realized. And not only California, but Nevada, Massachusetts,
all of Canada.
And Canada. Okay. The next one was women's rights and equality. Yay! I worked on a lot of films on that, and I did a lot of stuff on that. We still have a ways to go, but we're getting there. Okay. A very, very important one started to surface up. Replacing fossil fuels with alternative energy. Yes. I decided that we were not on the right track, and so I met Don Aikens. I hope he's here. I don't know if he is. But anyway, Don and I became very good friends. But before that, I had been dealing with all kinds of things. So that was my other issue. The last one was to normalize relations with Cuba. That has been realized. So 2 out of the 4 I've got, we're going on to the other 2. Now, the reason why I'm interested in Cuba is because I went to Cuba in 1966 when nobody else could go. And I got in there and I made a film called Fidelissimo. Poor old Fidel just died a couple of days ago. But anyway, he's in the video. And I want to go back to Cuba, and I have drafted up a script called Return to Havana 50 Years Later. Now, I'm not interested in what most people are going back to Cuba for, mostly Teflon and tourism. When I filmed that film, I filmed the Becados. The Becados are scholarship students, 250,000 of them, that Castro brought in to Havana to educate. Now, where did he put them up? He put them up in the confiscated homes of the casino owners and rich people that fled to Miami or Florida. So I want to go back 50 years later, because the average age of those kids was 15 years old then. I want to go back now, 50 years later, and see what happened to them, what they're doing now, and where they are. And I'll bet they're running the country. Okay, that's what I want to do. Okay, one more thing. And then you can cut off the questions and answers, sorry. Okay, one more thing. Okay, I want to wrap this up. So since here I've been doing a lot of promos for Lake Chapala Society. I've done several of them for that. I've done several for the Children's Art Program, various orphanages and animal shelters and whatever else. I'm currently doing a little film called Abrazo Paz, which is Hugs for Peace, with a young lady to stop bullying in schools. Okay. I've been making these films and most of these videos most of my life, and I'll continue to do so because that's what I feel, what I'm documenting will inspire people all over the world to make this a better world. That's my way of being a progressive activist. Okay, so I just want to end this very quickly. Filmmakers never die. When their story's finished, they just fade away. But my story hasn't ended yet, so I will end with to be continued.
You did make it. And we're better for it. Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. A mic will be brought to you. Stand up and hold the mic really close. We only have a few minutes for questions.
Kat, before we go on, if you'll go on the announcement that I send out each week, you will find Roy's website, and it's a very rich place.
Question way in the back and right here.
Yeah, you mentioned a Springer. What's a Springer?
Stringer.
A stringer. Stringer is somebody that is attached, of course. I was attached to the television networks because when they call me and say, Roy, can you do this? Can you do this? I'd say yes or no. Then they get somebody else. So they have all these, what they call stringers. It's a term we use in the business.
In the back.
Great presentation.
Hey, Don.
Really wonderful, especially the marijuana.
I knew you'd like that.
We were there at the same time. Anyhow, question about, had you stayed in Los Angeles, what do you think you would have become?
Well, I actually, after I made I didn't even mention that in here, but I made a feature film. Finally, every filmmaker that I know of, wants to do a feature film. I finally hit the jackpot. I celebrated my 40th birthday, premiering my feature film, Last Free Ride. Here's a film, a hip pirate rock and roll movie, filmed in the Sausalito houseboat community. It's a story about a poor man with a rich man's dream. He wants to sail around the world. Okay. What was your question again?
Who would you become if you stayed in L.A. instead of going to San Francisco?
When that film was finished, I was offered by agents, big agents, to represent me to do films in L.A. I turned them down. I wanted to live in San Francisco. I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. I didn't want to do it. And I had friends that moved there, and they didn't like it.
Over here.
Roy, thank you very much for a very interesting talk, and particularly all your projects. I would like to know what project has moved you and is your favorite?
I think my film Last Free Ride, actually, which I didn't talk about, moved me more than anything else. First of all, it took 3 years of my life, but it's because it was a poor man with a rich man's dream. Well, I'm a poor man, and I had a rich man's dream. But the thing is, it's a good film. It's got a lot of music in it, and it's about people's rights versus property rights. That's big, because in this film there's a big battle between the county and the community over property rights versus people's rights. Anyway, lots of good songs in it. There's one song I really like called Just Like Living in the Good Old Days, the best days you never ever had.
We've got time for one more question over here. Oh, well, maybe you.
Hi, I lived in the Sausalito houseboat community for years, and your film was very well known. I've never seen it, but I would like to get together with you and see it. I just want to say something about Cuba. I was there last year, and I was interviewing men our age about what it was like to grow up in Cuba, the past 50, 60 years post-Castro Cuba, and I got a pretty grim picture of what life was like for these guys. And basically, while all of us were tripping around, getting new ideas, going to Europe, going to South America, Central America, and everywhere else, and expanding, these guys were picking cotton sugar cane and living pretty grim lives. So that's something I'd like to find out more about. I think there's a great story there.
We have one more question right here.
Hello.
Hi, Lord.
How are you? It was a pleasure to help you with translation for some video. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Lord did all our translations.
Thank you, Nolan. Okay, that's it. He'll be hanging around. He doesn't have to, do the camera thing today, so he's going to be here to talk to any of you that want to talk to him.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you so much. Please turn on your cell phone.